It is July 21st, 2018, just after 10:30 p.m. Pacific Daylight Time, and you are looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 rocket with the Telstar 19 Vantage spacecraft on top, awaiting liftoff from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station in Florida. Good evening from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California. My name is Brian Malstead, and I'm a software engineer in our flight software department here at the headquarters, and I'll be your host for tonight's webcast. Now, today we are launching the Telstar 19 Vantage spacecraft to a geostationary transfer orbit. Liftoff is currently targeted for 1:50 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time or 5:50 Coordinated Universal Time. This will be SpaceX's 13th launch so far this year, and today we will be flying a brand new Block 5 booster, which we will be attempting to land on our East Coast drone ship named, of course, I Still Love You. Now, for tonight's mission, we're launching out of Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station, which is one of SpaceX's 2 East Coast launch sites. On the pad, you can see the 2-stage Falcon 9 vehicle. It stands 70 meters tall, which is greater than the wingspan of a 747 aircraft. The spacecraft itself is currently sitting inside of the 17-foot diameter payload fairing, which is that round upper portion at the top of Stage 2. Once we reach the vacuum of space, we will jettison the fairing halves as Stage 2 continues on its journey to orbit. Now, tonight's mission is the second flight of our Block 5 vehicle design, and it is the first Block 5 launch from Space Launch Complex 40. Now, Block 5 represents a series of upgrades to Falcon 9, and these designed to allow us to reuse each F9 10 times or more, as well as reduce refurbishment between flights. You can see some of the primary visual differences in the Block 5 design, the most prominent of which is that black inner stage in the middle of your screen now. So the vehicle undergoes various operations to prepare for liftoff, and much of this timeline is centered around what we call loading the vehicle with the fluids that are necessary to fly. This is analogous to filling your car with fuel, but rocket engines need additional substances to work. Now, in order to combust out in space where there is no oxygen, we have to bring our own, and we do so with densified liquid oxygen, or LOX. The fuel for Falcon 9 is RP-1, which is basically rocket-grade kerosene. Now, those two substances together are the propellants, and they began loading about an hour ago. This loading process continues until the last few minutes of countdown as we top off. A third item that you actually need to start the combustion of a fuel in an oxidizer is the ignition source, which is just like the spark plugs in your car. Our ignition source is a chemical mixture called TTEB. The T part pertains to triethyl aluminum, and TEB is triethyl borane. Now, when those contact each other, they start burning, and they burn so green. You should be able to see a quick glimpse of this with a green flash just before liftoff. In addition to those propellants, the rocket has pressurants on board to help the propellants flow. Falcon 9 uses helium for its pressurant, and we began the loading of this helium about 15 minutes ago. Regarding weather out there at Cape Canaveral, we're currently 60% favorable in status for liftoff, with the primary watch items being cumulus and thick layer clouds. The maximum upper level winds that we're seeing right now are coming from the west, and they're coming in at about 30 miles per hour at 40,000 feet. Now, we generally want to keep all winds to be under about 30 miles per hour, and we also ensure that there isn't too much wind shear. Now, wind shear is when winds at different altitudes are moving in different directions, so they create that shearing condition on the vehicle. The team will continue launching weather balloons to check the statuses at those various altitudes, and they do so every 30 minutes. But overall, weather continues to be go from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral Air Force Station. Now, the next pre-launch milestone that we have coming up is what we call engine chill. This is where we flow a very small amount of liquid oxygen through the engines to cool them down to their operating temperature. And this is so that when we start feeding them their full flow in flight, the LOX stays nice and cold, and it doesn't heat up to cause bubbles or other performance issues. The spacecraft, Telstar, is currently healthy as well. In these final moments before launch, just like Falcon 9, they are conducting checkouts to ensure that the spacecraft systems are functioning nominally before they are called to do so in flight. Another item we'd like to check is the range itself. Now, the range conducts many pre-launch tasks, including clearance of the pad and all the surrounding areas, as well as the neighboring airspace and the coastal clearance. So the range is giving us their green. If we do need it, a backup launch opportunity is available Monday morning, July 23rd, starting at about 1:50 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time, so about 24 hours from this moment. So tonight, SpaceX is launching Telstar 19 Vantage. It's one of a new generation of Telesat spacecraft designed to serve today's bandwidth-intensive applications. For us down here on Earth, that simply translates to improved access for all things internet-related. This pertains to everything from individual internet access to both business and government applications, all the way to direct-to-home satellite TV and much, much more. In addition to the improved broadband connectivity across the Americas and the Atlantic, Telstar 19 Vantage will also be able to provide internet connectivity to those in rural areas and in remote areas, and even coverage over the North Atlantic Ocean, which is super important when it comes to providing internet access for commercial airlines and even cruise ships. So in addition to being able to kick back and enjoy an in-flight movie or check your email from 35,000 feet, the aircraft crews and the maintenance teams are also able to benefit from this in-flight connectivity. So here's a closer look at the Telstar 19 Vantage satellite we'll be launching tonight. Now we're T-minus 6 minutes away from liftoff, so let's check back in one more time with the status of the rocket. Fuel, as I mentioned earlier, was doing the loading process. Well, it is now fully loaded on both stages, first and second. LOX is currently being topped off as we speak. Now you can totally see the venting coming from the side of the vehicle right now, and that's because of a very simple reason. We cool the liquid oxygen down to very cold temperatures to phase change it into a liquid. But when the outer layer of that liquid is exposed to the standard temperature and pressure of Florida's air, it evaporates back into a gas, and that's what you're seeing on your screen there. Very soon, you'll see those cradle arms of the transporter erector holding the vehicle. They'll release, and then the strong back will slightly retract in preparation for liftoff. And then, at T-minus 1 minute, the rocket's internal flight computers will take full control, which you'll hear on the countdown net as Falcon 9 is in startup. So, with all systems go, let's listen into the final 5 minutes of countdown now.
Stage 1 locks, let's close off for flight. Stage 2 locks, let's close off for flight.
Guys, let's close that.
AFTS is on for flight. Vehicles and startup.
Ground gas closeouts is complete.
Go for launch.
Stage 1 tanks pressing for flight.
One, zero, ignition, liftoff.
Vehicles pushing down range.
And we've had successful liftoff of the Falcon 9 rocket as we see all 9 of those first stage Merlin engines glowing beautifully, carrying Telstar 19 Vantage to geostationary transfer orbit. Now upon ascent, we go through max Q as our first milestone, and again, that's the maximum aerodynamic pressure. It's an important milestone because it means that from that moment on, we're going through thinner and thinner atmosphere and less stress.
Vehicle has reached maximum aerodynamic pressure.
And we've got that confirmation on the nets that we have gone through max Q. So again, less and less stress in the vehicle as we go up and up from here on out. Now, we're going to come through 3 events in pretty quick succession, and those are MECO, then stage separation, and then second engine start, or SES number 1. Now, those represent the cutoff of those 9 first stage engines that you see burning right now. Those will stop burning. Then the stages will separate once neither stage is burning, and then the second stage, once separated, will start its burn, and that's called SES, or second engine start number 1. Those three events will happen pretty quickly in a 10-second span, starting about 30 seconds from now. Again, MECO, separation, SES.
MECO.
Stage separation confirmed.
Recognition.
And you heard the callouts and saw the visual confirmation of main engine cutoff, stage separation from those onboard cameras, and then second engine start. And as a treat, we were able to see that green flash from the T-tab that I mentioned earlier as second stage ignited. The next milestone is fairing deploy. I mentioned these earlier, but we're going to jettison those fairing halves because once we're out in space, we no longer need that aerodynamic shield. So in order to become more fuel efficient, we get rid of this unnecessary mass.
Vehicle on nominal trajectory. Fairing separation confirmed.
And we've successfully had fairing separation. As those halves gently float away, we now have Telstar attached to second stage, exposed to the vacuum of space, continuing on through its first burn. Now we had successful liftoff. First stage is heading back. The sequence that we're going to perform regarding the burns for the first stage is a 2-burn sequence. It's going to be re-entry and landing. There's no boost back burn this time because we're simply going to follow a ballistic trajectory out into the Atlantic Ocean. That will occur about 2 minutes from now. And if you're just joining us, we're looking at the burning Merlin vacuum engine on second stage. The vehicles have lifted off. We have separated first and second stage. Second stage is continuing on, doing its first of 2 bland burns, carrying Telstar to GTO, while first stage goes back and is about 1.5 minutes away from conducting its first of 2 burns upon re-entry through the atmosphere. Now we're about 40 seconds away from that first re-entry burn, as I mentioned. And the purpose of this burn is to slow the vehicle down. Out in space, there aren't many particles. It's much sparser out there. But once we re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, the air actually creates quite a bit of drag on the vehicle. So we want to burn to slow ourselves down so that we don't experience a bunch of heat and stress accumulation on first stage. So again, on your right, second stage in Merlin vacuum is burning. On the left, we have first stage onboard cameras who are about to start their re-entry burn.
Stage 1 entry burn has started.
And there you have it. This burn will last for about 20 seconds. And again, a quick eye would notice the continuity of that T-tab green flash again as the engine's ignited.
Second stage following nominal trajectory.
Stage 1 entry burn is shut down.
And the burn has concluded. To give some scope for what that burn did, we're currently traveling about a looks like 17,000 kilometers per hour. That is multiple times the speed of a commercial airliner. And in about a minute and a half, we're going to be touching down on that drone ship. So in the course of about 90 seconds, we're going to be going from many times the speed of a jet to 0. So it really shows the efficacy of those burns as they decelerate the vehicle. Now, as we continue this this landing sequence of first stage, second stage is going to continue its action as well. Second stage, second engine cutoff, so SECO number 1, that will conclude right in the middle of the landing sequence. So the landing burn will begin about 10 seconds later up in space. Second stage will stop firing its engine, and then about 5 seconds after that, back on Earth, the first stage will finish its landing burn and hopefully touch
Stage
down
1 is
on the
transonic.
surface of course, I Still Love You.
Starting terminal guidance.
As we go supersonic here, we're about 20 seconds away from the landing burn, and then again, 10 seconds to SECO, and then 5 seconds after that to landing.
Stage 1 landing burn is starting.
Stage 2 AFTS has safe.
Drone ship has AOS. Landing legs have deployed.
And of course, as a rocket descends upon a drone ship out in the middle of the ocean, it is of course difficult to sustain connection with it, so we'll get an update on that in a second. But we return back now to the primary mission, which is second stage with Telstar. Now, SECO should have occurred as well. I believe we did hear that over the nets, so SECO did occur. So in the middle of that sequence of landing, as I said, second engine cutoff number 1 did happen. So the first of the 2 planned burns of second stage has concluded. We'll give you an update on the first stage landing as soon as we can, but for now, second stage is in good orbit. At this moment, we're going to enter about an 18-minute coast phase. Again, second stage has 2 planned burns, as I said, and the second one will start about 18 minutes from now. So see you at about T plus 26 minutes. And before we step into that coast period, there the vehicle is. Again, as a rocket fires upon a ship with a camera, it's hard to keep connectivity, but there it is, standing proud on Of Course I Still Love You. So with the landing behind us, again, primary mission, we're going to go into about a 17-minute coast phase now. We'll see you at T plus 26 minutes for an update on Telstar 19 Vantage. Welcome back, everybody, as we near the end of our brief coast period, where Stage 2 is about to reignite to perform its second of the 2 planned burns. Now we're about 40 seconds away from SES-2, which is second engine start number 2. Again, that's the second burn, and it will last for about 40 seconds, at which point you'll hear the terminating SECO-2 call-out, which stands for second engine cutoff number 2. So stand by about 20 seconds until SES-2.
Back ignition.
And as you saw during that brief slice, we did see MVAC ignite. Again, 40-second burn here to perform final adjustments to get Telstar pointed into its desired final trajectory. So it appears we've got some light signal from our ground stations, so we're waiting until that communication channel stabilizes and we can get full confirmation that the second burn did shut down. So we'll let you know as soon as we have more data here in a moment. Okay, so as you can see on your screen with the live video coverage, we did get feedback again. Signal for ground stations can go in and out sometimes, but we've got a strong, stable signal now. So we have video on board. Second stage concluded its burn. SECO number 2 went well as MVAC-D shut down to conclude its second of the 2 planned burns. Now, Telstar is in a good orbit after that final adjustment, and the next milestone coming up about a minute or so from now is deployment of Telstar itself into geostationary transfer orbit. So we'll check in about 60 seconds.
Payload separation confirmed.
All right, and as Telstar 19 Vantage fades into the distance after a gentle push from those deployment springs on second stage, that will bring an end to our webcast tonight. So wrapping up everything in quick summary, it was a great liftoff of both vehicles conjoined. We had the successful separation and landing of the first stage, and then second stage continued on with its 2 burns to deliver Telstar 19 Vantage to the geostationary transfer orbit. With that said, SpaceX would like to extend a sincere thank you to Telesat, our customer, as well as the payload manufacturer, SSL, and as always, the Air Force's 45th Space Wing for their range support, and the FAA. If you'd like to stay up to date with what we're doing here, please follow us on our social media channels via our Twitter feed, as well as Instagram or spacex.com. Again, thank you very much for joining us tonight. We'll see you in just a few days at the next launch.